The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and golden light on that cold February evening in Manhattan. Rich people in expensive clothes filled the room, talking and laughing while they held wine glasses and ate small, fancy foods from silver trays. The charity event was almost over, and most guests were feeling happy and satisfied after a wonderful evening of music and good company. Alexander Chun stood near the black grand piano on the stage, still wearing his perfect black suit and white shirt. Sweat had dried on his forehead from the hard pieces he had just played for the crowd. People kept coming up to him with big smiles and kind words about his music. They told him how amazing he was and how his fingers moved like magic across the piano keys. Alexander smiled and said thank you, but inside he felt very proud of himself. He knew he was one of the best pianists in the world, and tonight he had proved it again. The evening was for a charity that helped poor children learn music in New York schools. Alexander had played some of the hardest piano pieces ever written. He started with Chopin Etude Opus 25 No. 11, which made people gasp because it was so fast and difficult. Then he played Liszt Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2, which made everyone clap and cheer. He finished with Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto No. 3, which was so beautiful that some ladies in the audience started crying with joy. Alexander walked around the room after his performance, talking to the rich people who had paid lots of money to be there tonight. They all wanted to shake his hand and tell him how wonderful he was. Mrs. Patterson, who owned 3 houses and a yacht, told him his playing reminded her of the great masters. Mr. Williams, who ran a big company, said Alexander was the best pianist he had ever heard. Everyone wanted to take pictures with him and get his signature on their programs. As Alexander moved through the crowd, he felt very important and special. He had worked hard for many years to become this good at piano. He practiced 8 hours every day when he was young. He studied at the best music schools and won many competitions. Now he was 35 years old and famous around the world. People paid hundreds of dollars just to hear him play. He had recordings that sold millions of copies, and he traveled to different countries every month to perform in concert halls. While Alexander enjoyed all the attention, he noticed something happening at the other end of the room. The catering staff was cleaning up the mess from dinner. They were taking away dirty plates and empty wine glasses. They wiped down tables and picked up napkins that had fallen on the floor. These workers wore simple black and white uniforms and moved quietly so they would not bother the guests. One woman caught Alexander's attention as she worked. She looked to be about 50 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a simple way. Her name tag said Maria, and she was carefully washing wine glasses at a small station near the kitchen door. She moved slowly and seemed tired after a long day of work. Her hands looked rough and worn from years of cleaning and hard work. She wore no makeup and no jewelry except for a simple gold wedding ring that looked old and scratched. What made Alexander notice Maria was the way she stopped working when music was still playing softly from the piano on stage. Even though the main performance was over, someone had left a recording playing through the sound system. It was playing a soft piece by Debussy, and Maria had stopped her cleaning to listen. She stood very still with a wine glass in her hands and her eyes closed. Her face looked peaceful and far away, like the music was taking her to another place. Alexander watched Maria for a few minutes and started to feel annoyed. He did not like that she was not working while she was supposed to be cleaning up. He also felt strange that this simple cleaning woman seemed to really understand and enjoy classical music. In his world, only educated and wealthy people truly appreciated the kind of music he played. He had always believed that classical music was too complex and sophisticated for ordinary working people to really understand. The wine and praise from the evening made Alexander feel bold and a little mean. He decided to have some fun with this situation. He walked over to where Maria was standing and cleared his throat loudly to get her attention. Maria opened her eyes and looked surprised to see the famous pianist standing next to her. She quickly looked down and started cleaning the wine glass again, moving faster because she thought she might be in trouble for not working. "Excuse me," Alexander said in a voice that was polite but had a mean edge to it. Several wealthy guests who were standing nearby heard him talking and came closer to see what was happening. They sensed that something interesting was about to happen and they wanted to watch. Maria looked up at Alexander with worried eyes. She had been working at events like this for many years, and she knew that famous people and rich guests did not usually talk to the cleaning staff. She wondered if she had done something wrong or if Alexander was going to complain about her work to her boss. "I noticed you seem to really enjoy classical music," Alexander continued, speaking louder now so that more people could hear him. The group of wealthy guests got bigger as more people came to watch. They were smiling and whispering to each other. Because they could tell Alexander was up to something entertaining, Maria nodded her head slowly but did not say anything. She was not sure why this famous man was talking to her, and she felt nervous with all the rich people staring at her. "You were listening so carefully to the music just now," Alexander went on, his voice getting louder and more dramatic. "You looked like you really understood what you were hearing. Tell me, do you play piano yourself?" The rich people started to giggle quietly among themselves. They could see where this was going, and they thought it would be funny to watch this simple cleaning woman try to pretend she knew about music. Maria felt her face get hot with embarrassment, but she answered honestly. "I used to play a little bit many years ago," she said quietly. Alexander smiled a big fake smile and spread his arms wide like he was on a stage. "Well then, perhaps you would like to try playing something for us tonight. We have this beautiful piano right here, and I'm sure everyone would love to hear what you can do." The crowd of wealthy guests started laughing and clapping their hands. They thought this was going to be very entertaining. They expected Maria to get scared and say no, or maybe try to play something simple and make mistakes that would be funny. To watch, some people took out their phones to record what they thought would be an amusing moment to share with their friends later. Maria stood very still, holding the wine glass in her hands, while everyone waited to see what she would say. Maria looked around the room at all the faces staring at her and waiting for her answer. The rich people in their expensive clothes were smiling and whispering to each other like they were watching a show at the theater. Some of them had their phones ready to take videos. They were all expecting her to say no or to get scared and run away to the kitchen where she belonged. Alexander stood with his arms crossed, still wearing that fake smile on his face. He was sure that Maria would back down from his challenge. He thought she would mumble some excuse about being too busy with work or too nervous to play in front of so many important people. Then everyone would laugh and he would feel clever for putting this cleaning woman in her place. But Maria did not do what they expected her to do. Instead of looking scared or embarrassed, something changed in her face. Her tired eyes became stronger and more focused. She stood up straighter and looked directly at Alexander without looking away. The nervous feeling she had been carrying seemed to disappear, and was replaced by something that looked almost like calm confidence. She carefully set down the wine glass she had been holding on the small table next to her. Then she untied the white apron from around her waist and folded it neatly before placing it next to the glass. Her movements were slow and deliberate, like she was thinking carefully about what she was going to do next. The room got very quiet as people watched Maria prepare herself. Even the other workers who were still cleaning up stopped what they were doing to see what was happening. The soft background music that had been playing was turned off, and now there was complete silence except for the sound of people breathing and the quiet clink of glasses from the kitchen. Maria looked at Alexander again and spoke in a voice that was quiet but clear enough for everyone to hear. "I have not played piano for many years," she said slowly. "My hands are not as young as they used to be, and they are rough from work. But yes, I would like to try." Alexander's smile got bigger because he thought he was about to win his little game. He made a big show of gesturing toward the grand piano on the small stage at the front of the room. "Please be my guest," he said loudly. "The piano is all yours." The crowd of wealthy people followed behind Maria as she walked toward the stage. They were talking excitedly to each other about what was about to happen. Mrs. Patterson whispered to her friend that this was going to be hilarious. Mr. Williams took out his phone and started recording. A young woman in a red dress giggled. and said she felt almost sorry for the cleaning lady who was about to embarrass herself in front of everyone. Maria walked slowly across the ballroom floor toward the piano. Her simple black work shoes made quiet sounds on the marble floor. She did not look back at the crowd following her, and she did not seem to hear their whispered comments and quiet laughter. Her face looked peaceful and thoughtful, like she was remembering something from long ago. When Maria reached the piano bench, she stood there for a moment just looking at the beautiful black instrument. It was a Steinway grand piano that cost more money than most people made in several years. The wood was polished so well that it reflected the light from the crystal chandeliers above. The keys were perfect white and black rectangles that looked like they had never been touched by dirty or rough hands. Maria reached out very slowly and touched the piano with just her fingertips. She ran her hand gently along the smooth wooden edge and then touched a few of the keys so softly that they did not make any sound. It was like she was greeting an old friend that she had not seen for a very long time. The crowd got closer and formed a circle around the piano. Alexander stood right at the front where he could see everything clearly. He was still smiling and waiting for the show to begin. He expected Maria to sit down and try to play something simple like Happy Birthday, or maybe a children's song. Then she would make mistakes and everyone would laugh and clap politely before she gave up and went back to her cleaning. But Maria did not sit down right away. Instead, she walked slowly around the piano, looking at it from different angles. She bent down and looked at the strings inside when she lifted the lid. She touched the pedals at the bottom with her foot. She was studying the instrument like a scientist studies something important in a laboratory. "Is everything all right?" Alexander asked with fake concern in his voice. "Do you need help figuring out how to work the piano?" Some people in the crowd laughed at his joke. Maria looked at him calmly and shook her head. "No, thank you," she said. "I'm just remembering." She walked back to the bench and finally sat down. She adjusted the height of the seat by turning a knob underneath until it felt right. Then she placed her hands on her knees and sat very still for almost a full minute with her eyes closed. The room was so quiet that people could hear the clock on the wall ticking. During this quiet time, something strange started to happen. The people in the crowd began to feel less sure about what they were going to see. Maria's calm behavior was not what they had expected from someone who was supposed to be nervous and scared. The way she had touched the piano and studied it suggested that she knew more about the instrument than they had thought. Alexander started to feel a tiny bit uncomfortable, but he pushed that feeling away. He reminded himself that this was just a cleaning woman who probably learned to play chopsticks or some other simple song many years ago. There was no way she could really play classical music at the level that would impress anyone in this room. Maria opened her eyes and looked down at the piano keys. She raised her hands slowly and placed her fingers on the keys in position. Her rough, worn hands looked strange against the perfect white keys, but her fingers found their places like they belonged there. The crowd held their breath and waited to see what would happen next. Alexander leaned forward with his arms still crossed, ready to enjoy the entertainment that was about to begin. Everyone expected to hear wrong notes and clumsy playing that would make them feel superior and amused, but as Maria took one more deep breath and prepared to begin playing, something in the air seemed to change. The feeling in the room shifted from expectation of comedy to something that felt more serious and uncertain. Without knowing why, the people watching began to sense that maybe this was not going to be the simple joke they had thought it would be. Maria placed her fingers on the piano keys and began to play. The first note that came from the piano was soft and clear and perfect. It floated through the air like a bird taking flight. The second note followed, then the third, and suddenly the room was filled with the most beautiful music that anyone there had heard in a very long time. She was playing Bach's Air on the G string, one of the most beloved pieces of classical music ever written. But this was not just someone playing the notes correctly. This was music that came from deep inside her heart and soul. Each note was placed exactly where it belonged, with perfect timing and incredible feeling. Her rough hands moved across the keys like they were dancing, creating sounds that seemed to come from heaven itself. The crowd of wealthy people who had been ready to laugh and take videos suddenly stopped talking. Their phones slowly lowered to their sides as they forgot about recording and just listened. The smiles disappeared from their faces and were replaced by looks of shock and amazement. Nobody could believe what they were hearing. Alexander's fake smile melted away completely. His arms dropped to his sides and his mouth opened slightly as he stared at Maria's hands moving across the keys. This was not possible. This cleaning woman was playing better than most professional pianists he knew. She was playing with technique and expression that took decades to develop. Her interpretation of Bach was so beautiful and so perfect that it made his own playing from earlier in the evening seem ordinary by comparison. As Maria continued to play, something magical happened in the room. The harsh bright lights seemed to become softer and warmer. The cold marble floor and fancy decorations faded into the background. All that mattered was the music flowing from the piano and the woman creating it. Time seemed to stop as everyone listened to every note with complete attention. Mrs. Patterson, who had been ready to laugh at Maria just minutes before, felt tears starting to form in her eyes. The music was touching something deep inside her that she had forgotten existed. Mr. Williams put his phone completely away and moved closer to the piano so he could hear every detail of the performance. The young woman in the red dress stood with her hand over her mouth. Unable to believe what she was witnessing, Maria's fingers moved across the keys with grace and confidence that came from years of serious training and practice. She played the melody with her right hand while her left hand provided perfect accompaniment that supported and enhanced every phrase. Her touch was so controlled that she could make the piano whisper like a gentle breeze or sing like a choir of angels. The Bach piece was technically difficult, but Maria played it like it was as natural as breathing. She knew exactly when to slow down and when to speed up to make the music more expressive. She understood how to shape each phrase so that it told a story. Her playing showed deep knowledge of the composer's intentions and the style of the Baroque period. As the Bach piece came to its gentle ending, Maria did not stop playing. Instead, she moved smoothly into another piece. This time Debussy's Clair de Lune. The transition was so seamless that it felt like one long piece of music instead of two separate compositions. The Debussy was completely different in style from the Bach, but Maria adapted her playing perfectly to match the impressionistic French composer's dreamy and mysterious sound. The Debussy piece required different skills than the Bach. Where Bach was precise and mathematical, Debussy was flowing and emotional. Maria's playing changed completely to match this new style. Her hands created colors and textures on the piano that painted pictures in the minds of everyone listening. The music sounded like moonlight dancing on water or clouds drifting across the night sky. Several people in the crowd were now crying openly. The music was so beautiful and so unexpected that it broke down all the walls they had built around their emotions. These wealthy people who spent their lives focused on money and status and social position were suddenly reminded of what really mattered in life. They were experiencing pure beauty created by someone they had dismissed as unimportant just minutes before. Alexander stood frozen in place, his mind racing to understand what was happening. This was impossible, but it was real. Maria was not just playing the notes correctly, she was interpreting the music with the depth and understanding of someone who had studied these pieces for years. Her technique was flawless, her musical knowledge was extensive, and her emotional connection to the music was profound. The way Maria used the piano's pedals showed advanced training. She knew exactly when to press them and when to release them, to create the right sounds and textures. Her fingering choices were sophisticated and showed deep understanding of piano technique. The way she balanced the melody against the accompaniment revealed years of serious musical education. As the Debussy piece developed, Maria began to add her own personal interpretation to the music. She took small freedoms with the timing and dynamics that only a truly skilled musician would dare to attempt. These changes did not harm the composer's intentions but actually enhanced them. showing that Maria understood the music so well that she could make it her own while still respecting. The room had become completely silent except for the piano music. Even the kitchen staff had stopped their work and come to listen. Security guards who were supposed to be watching the doors moved closer to hear better. Everyone in the building seemed to be drawn to the incredible music coming from the ballroom. Alexander realized that his hands were shaking. As a professional musician, he could recognize true artistry when he heard it, and what Maria was doing at the piano was nothing short of extraordinary. She was not just playing music, she was creating an experience that would stay with everyone in that room for the rest of their lives. Maria's face while she played was peaceful and focused, but also showed traces of deep sadness. It was like the music was bringing back memories that were both beautiful and painful. Her eyes were closed most of the time, but when she opened them, they looked far away, as if she was seeing something that no one else could see. As the Clair de Lune reached its most beautiful section, Maria's playing became even more expressive. She made the piano sing with such feeling that it seemed like a human voice was telling a story of love and loss and hope. Every person listening felt like the music was speaking directly to their heart and understanding their deepest emotions. The wealthy guests who had come to the charity event to see and be seen, to network and show off their expensive clothes and jewelry, had forgotten all about those things. They were completely absorbed in the music and the amazing revelation that this simple woman they had ignored possessed one of the most beautiful musical gifts they had ever encountered. As the final notes of Clair de Lune faded away into silence, Maria's hands slowly lifted from the piano keys and came to rest in her lap. She sat perfectly still for a moment with her eyes still closed, as if she was holding on to the last echoes of the music before letting them disappear forever. The entire ballroom remained completely quiet, with everyone afraid to break the spell that her playing had created. Then the silence was broken by the sound of someone clapping. It started with just one person, then two, then suddenly the entire room erupted in applause that was louder and more genuine than anything they had given to Alexander earlier that evening. People were not just clapping politely because they felt they should. They were clapping because they had just witnessed something truly magical and life-changing. Maria opened her eyes and looked around at all the faces staring at her with amazement and respect. These were the same people who had been ready to laugh at her just minutes before, but now they looked at her like she was someone completely different. She stood up slowly from the piano bench and smoothed down her simple work uniform, suddenly feeling very aware of how she must look to all these wealthy people in their expensive clothes. Alexander walked toward the piano with his face showing confusion and deep curiosity. All of his earlier arrogance and mean-spirited humor had completely disappeared. He approached Maria with genuine respect and spoke to her in a quiet voice that only she could hear at first. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked, his voice full of honest amazement. "That was extraordinary. I have never heard." Bach and Debussy played with such feeling and technical perfection outside of the world's greatest concert halls. Maria looked at Alexander and saw that his question was sincere. There was no more mockery in his face, only genuine wonder and perhaps a bit of shame for how he had treated her earlier. She took a deep breath and decided that after playing her heart out for these strangers, she owed them an honest answer about who she really was. "My name is Maria Santos Rodriguez," she began, speaking loud enough now for everyone in the room to hear her clearly. 25 years ago, I was not a cleaning woman. I was a classical pianist who had studied at Juilliard School of Music in New York City. I performed with symphony orchestras in Boston and Philadelphia. I gave solo recitals in concert halls across the country. Music was my entire life, and I thought it always would be. The crowd moved closer to hear her story, their faces showing complete attention and growing understanding. Mrs. Patterson wiped tears from her eyes as she began to realize the tragedy of what they had almost missed. Mr. Williams put his hand over his heart, feeling ashamed of how quickly he had judged this remarkable woman. Maria continued her story, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I was building a career as a professional musician and everything was going well. I had a recording contract and bookings for concerts stretching out for 2 years in advance. But then life changed everything in ways I never expected. She paused and looked around the room, seeing that everyone was listening to every word she spoke. 24 years ago, my husband Carlos was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's disease. He was only 42 years old, and we had been married for just 3 years. The doctors said his condition would get worse quickly, and he would need constant care within a few years. The room remained silent as people absorbed this information. Many of them had never had to face such difficult choices in their own comfortable lives, and they were beginning to understand the sacrifice that Maria had been forced to make. Then 6 months after Carlos's diagnosis, our daughter Isabella was born, Maria went on. She's the most beautiful and loving child anyone could ask for, but she was born with cerebral palsy and intellectual disabilities. She needed special medical care and therapy that was very expensive. She also needed me to be there for her every day. Alexander listened to Maria's story with growing respect and understanding. As a professional musician himself, he knew how much talent and dedication it took to reach the level of playing he had just heard. He also knew how difficult it must have been to give up a promising career in music to care for family members who needed her. I had to make a choice, Maria continued. I could keep pursuing my music career and hire people to take care of Carlos and Isabella, but that would have meant being away from home for weeks at a time when they needed me most. Or I could give up music and find work that would let me be there for my family while still paying for all the medical bills and special care they required. The wealthy guests in the room shifted uncomfortably as they realized the impossible situation that Maria had faced. Most of them had never had to choose between their careers and their families because they had enough money to hire help for any problems that arose. The choice was not really a choice at all, Maria said with a sad smile. I loved music more than anything in the world except for Carlos and Isabella. So I canceled all my concert bookings and recording sessions. I sold my piano to help pay for Carlos's medical treatments. I found work wherever I could, cleaning offices at night, working in restaurants during the day, and later doing catering and janitorial work at events like this one. Several people in the crowd were now crying openly as they understood the magnitude of what Maria had given up for love. Alexander felt his throat tighten with emotion as he realized how shallow and cruel his earlier behavior had been. For 24 years, I have been taking care of my family, Maria continued. Carlos is now in a special care facility because his Alzheimer's has progressed too far for me to handle alone. Isabella is 24 years old, and she lives with me. She can do some things for herself, but she still needs daily help and supervision. The medical bills never stop coming, and insurance only covers part of the costs. Maria looked at the piano behind her with love and sadness in her eyes. I have not touched a piano regularly in all these years. Sometimes when I am cleaning at events like this one and I hear classical music playing, it brings back memories of who I used to be. Tonight, when you challenged me to play, something inside me could not resist the chance to feel that connection to music one more time. The room remained completely silent as people processed Maria's incredible story. They realized they had witnessed not just beautiful music, but the resurrection of a dream that had been buried under years of sacrifice and responsibility. Alexander stood before this remarkable woman feeling humbled and ashamed, but also inspired by her strength and the pure love that had driven her choices. Alexander stood in front of Maria for a long moment, struggling to find the right words to express what he was feeling. The shame of his earlier behavior weighed heavily on his heart, but more than that, he felt a deep respect for this woman, who had given up everything for love and family. Finally, he stepped forward and did something that shocked everyone in the room. Including himself, he took Maria's rough, work-worn hands in his own and gently kissed them, the same hands that had just created the most beautiful music anyone there had ever heard. I am so sorry, he said with tears in his eyes. I am sorry for the way I treated you tonight, and I am sorry for all the years your incredible gift has been hidden from the world because you were too busy caring for the people you love. Maria looked surprised by Alexander's gesture, but she could see the sincerity in his face. "You do not need to apologize," she said gently. "You could not have known who I was or what my story is. I have gotten used to being invisible to people like you over the years." But Alexander shook his head firmly. "That is exactly the problem," he said, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I should never have assumed that you were less important or less talented than anyone else in this room just because of the work you do or the clothes you wear. What I did tonight was wrong and cruel, and I want everyone here to witness my apology to you." The crowd of wealthy guests shifted uncomfortably because Alexander's words made them think about their own behavior and assumptions. Many of them realized they were just as guilty of judging Maria based on her appearance and job without ever considering that she might have a rich inner life and incredible talents. Mrs. Patterson stepped forward from the crowd, her eyes still red from crying during Maria's performance. "Maria, I want to apologize too," she said in a shaking voice. "I was ready to laugh at you and take videos to share with my friends. I am ashamed of myself for being so shallow and cruel. Your playing tonight was the most beautiful thing I have heard in years." One by one, other guests began to speak up with their own apologies and expressions of amazement at Maria's talent. Mr. Williams said he wanted to help, somehow. The young woman in the red dress said she would never again judge someone based on their job or appearance. The room filled with voices of people who had been changed by witnessing Maria's incredible performance and hearing her story. Alexander raised his hand to quiet the crowd because he had something important to say. "Maria, I want to ask you something, and I hope you will consider it carefully," he began. "Would you be willing to return to music? I know you have responsibilities and commitments that cannot be ignored, but I believe the world needs to hear your gift. I want to help make that possible." Maria looked confused and a little scared. "I appreciate your kindness, but I cannot abandon my daughter Isabella or stop paying for my husband's care," she said. "Music was my dream once, but my family is my reality now." Alexander nodded with understanding. "I am not asking you to abandon your family," he said. "I am asking if you would be open to finding a way to do both. What if we could arrange things so that returning to music would actually help you provide better care for Carlos and Isabella?" Before Maria could answer, Mrs. Patterson stepped forward again. "Alexander is right," she said. "Maria, you should not have to choose between your gift and your family. What if all of us here tonight work together to help you? We have money and connections and influence. We could make sure that Carlos and Isabella get the best possible care while you share your incredible talent with the world." Other voices joined in with offers of help. Mr. Williams said his company could sponsor concerts. Someone else offered to help with medical bills. A woman who owned art galleries said she could organize fundraising events. The energy in the room shifted from shame and apology to excitement and determination to help Maria. Maria felt overwhelmed by all the offers and kind words. After so many years of struggling alone and being invisible to wealthy people like these, she could hardly believe they were offering to help her. "I do not know what to say," she whispered. "This is all so unexpected." Alexander took her hands again and spoke gently. "You do not have to decide anything tonight," he said. "But please think about it. Your talent is too extraordinary to remain hidden. You could teach students, give concerts, maybe even make recordings again. And with our help, you would not have to worry about Isabella's care or Carlos's medical bills." Over the following weeks, word of Maria's incredible performance spread far beyond the people who had been in the ballroom that night. Someone had managed to record part of her playing on their phone, and when they shared it on social media, it went viral within days. Local news stations picked up the story of the cleaning woman who turned out to be a world-class pianist. National music magazines wrote articles about her story. The attention brought both opportunities and support that Maria had never dreamed possible. A GoFundMe campaign started by Mrs. Patterson raised over $200,000 in just 1 month to help with medical expenses for Carlos and Isabella. Music schools offered her teaching positions that would allow her to work flexible hours. Concert venues invited her to perform. Most importantly, Alexander kept his promise to help. He arranged for Maria to have access to practice pianos and helped her prepare for her return to performing. He also made sure that Isabella had the best possible care and educational support, and that Carlos was moved to an even better care facility. 6 months after that night at the Plaza Hotel, Maria gave her first public concert in 25 years. The concert hall was filled with music lovers, but also with many of the wealthy guests who had been at the charity event. Alexander introduced her performance and told the audience about her incredible story of sacrifice and hidden talent. As Maria walked onto the stage in a beautiful concert dress that Mrs. Patterson had bought for her, she looked completely different from the tired cleaning woman she had been that night. But when she sat down at the piano and began to play, it was clear that her gift had not been diminished by the years of silence. If anything, her music was even more powerful because it now carried the weight of all her experiences and sacrifices. The audience gave her multiple standing ovations, and she had to return for 3 encore pieces. But the most meaningful moment came at the end when Isabella, who had been brought to hear her mother perform, clapped her hands with joy from her wheelchair in the front row. That night, Maria realized that she had not lost her dream after all. She had simply learned that dreams can take different forms than we expect, and that sometimes the most beautiful music comes from hearts that have been broken and rebuilt with love.